Perspective angles are the angles that are formed in various subjects that are caused by the particular viewing point we have. It can be a real frustration if we have a subject that we've put a lot of detail into, if we get these angles wrong, because no matter how well the detail is done, regardless of our drawing style, if the angles aren't right, there's something about them that will just look wrong, whether it's a complex subject or a much more simple subject. The perspective angles will still be important for a sense of reality. And it's not just architecture where perspective angles are involved. How every object looks changes according to the position from which we view it. This exercise is designed as a fast and effective way to practice getting these angles correct without the time and the effort and the energy to do a whole drawing. It lets us just focus on the one thing that we want to improve. And this is what skill development is about, focusing on one thing intensely so that we can do it over and over again in a short period of time, and then we can use that skill in our general drawing. I start this exercise by getting a reference photo. They don't have to be in color. I've taped it down using the low adhesive tape that I use when I draw. This is not expensive art supply. This is from a hardware store that's used in house painting. And I'm also going to tape down my scrap paper. This is important because if our papers move, if either of these move, then that can change our perception of the angle. And that's going to go against the whole point of this exercise. So I'm going to start by just drawing this line down here. Now, the exercise is super simplified. The only thing I'm focusing on is getting these angles as accurate as I can by observation. So I draw this line here. Now I'm looking at this angle. If you know my channel, you know I often measure the angle this way. I'm not doing that for this exercise because I'm wanting to hone my ability to observe the angle accurately and to be able to draw it accurately. So I'm just looking at this now, and we won't check it just yet. We'll come down and we'll get this lower angle done. Now, one thing I sometimes do is I don't actually draw this in, but I visualize a horizontal line so that I can see the angle as an angle, not in connection with the subject or the perspective of the subject. I just see it as an angle, and then I can try and draw this angle as well. Doing a dry run can give us a chance just to visualize if we're kind of in the right direction. Having done that, now I'm not drawing the same scale, I'm deliberately drawing smaller. We are wanting to keep our proportions though, the height to width ratio as close to the original as possible, but the focus is on these angles. So having now done this, I need to check whether or not I've been accurate. And this is why we also need to have these both taped down so that when we do this, nothing moves. We'll start with this bottom angle because it's down below. So here's the angle that I'm wanting to follow. Whoa! I'm smiling. Excellent. I'm not as sure about this. I thought that one was pretty okay. Not so sure about this one. So let's just check this, shall we? Well, that's pretty good. Having done this, let's work at the other angles we've got on the front. So we've got this angle and we've got this angle here. We won't worry about this detail because this exercise is not about even drawing an outline of the structure. It's about focusing on the perspective angles. And again, this might be a helpful thing to do to see the angle from the horizontal, or we may just observe it. And getting a little muscle memory may help. How's that going to go? Before we check it, we'll do the same thing down here. This one is much closer to the horizontal than this one. It's probably actually half the angle here. Trying to see the relative size of one angle to another angle we've already done can be helpful. I try and visualize it first in my head. Again, if I were doing a drawing, I would actually do a dot where I think the angle's going to take this line, and then I would measure it, and then I would slide back and forth and see. But for this exercise, I want to make it a bit harder because I want to be training myself to see everything I need to see here through learning to observe the reference really accurately and carefully. Okay, and now we check the angles again to see how we've gone. We'll start up the top. That one's pretty good too. Let's try this one. And that one's pretty accurate as well. However, let's say that your first take had a few issues with it. Let's say you end up with a box such as this. So when you check, now when I look at this, I can see how far out I was in my observation. If I find that when I do this over and over again as an exercise, so I can do it over and over again in just a minute or two, if consistently my line is above where the angle should be, then that gives me information I can use when I draw. I know that I'm probably going to try and do the line angled too high. I need to bring the angle down more. How have we gone with this one? Again, my angle hasn't been extreme enough. I've been too conservative in this angle, just as I was too conservative in that angle. I haven't got these angles as extreme as they are in our reference. And it's often these dramatic angles that help give a real sense of drama, visual drama, to our drawing. And so when I don't get them extreme enough, when I lessen their impact, I'm lessening the visual interest of my drawing. Let's look at the other lines. But with this side, my angle is too extreme. And here, again, my angle is too extreme. It's steeper than it should be. Another useful thing that we can do to help us see if we've got our proportions correct is to put just a little bit of the detail onto one of our surfaces and see if it looks okay. Looks to me like this may be just slightly too narrow across the front. How does this side go? This one becomes even narrower. So the proportions here were better than here. So the exercise is to use references, preferably that we've already printed off, but they don't have to be this simple. We can take a far more complex scene, but we can reduce it to a much more simplified form. So these are the lines, these are the angles I'm going to want to be using in my practice exercise. I think I'll add those as well. Again, I'll start with this corner. So now I'll come around this way. With this line, I'm also going to be working to draw these proportions. So I'm seeing each of these horizontal lines as defining a certain proportioned rectangle. Now I know with the fan pattern of perspective, this angle will be slightly less than the angle above. And now this line. So I'm looking here thinking, well, it's about 2.5 of what's above. 2.5, so maybe about here. And I'm looking at this angle now. And look, we probably might as well use these lines as well. This is almost a horizontal line across, so it's very close to eye level. This line goes the opposite direction to all of the others, so that's a really important point to notice. And now, besides straightening this corner, we go the other way. So again, if it's helpful, we can try and visualize the angle of the horizontal. This one, again, we can visualize the angle of the horizontal if that helps. But I'm not making marks on my paper. I'm still trying to visualize it in my mind because it's my observation skill of the perspective angles I want to focus on. This one slopes down just ever so slightly, and this one slopes up the other way. And there I have it. Now you'll notice I didn't use these lines, and that's because these are not perspective angles. These reflect the slope of the ground. This roadway here is sloping uphill. This one here is sloping downhill. We can see by this architectural detail. These basement windows get taller as the ground slopes downwards, and on the other wall they become shorter as the ground slopes upwards. Now we check. That's not too bad. Let's try this angle. That's not too bad. Let's try this angle. Now you might think, oh, well, that doesn't make any difference, but actually it's an observable difference. And in my mind, we should be wanting to be more correct than that line. We want to hone our ability to so that we can see and draw this level of accuracy. Let's try this one. Again, this one is a little too steep. This line is more horizontal than I allowed it for. Let's try this one down here. And again, my line a little bit too low there. Let's try on the other side. Now, this can't be right and this right because this angle needs to be steeper than this one. So I'll just check that first one again. Yep. Okay, so I had a few problems here, here, and here, and these ones were pretty much okay. This is all we do for this exercise. We're not worried about the details, the edges, the visual effects that might be in our subject. This is to focus on the angles and on the proportions of the spaces that we define. So the idea is that we collect our reference photos, whether we've drawn them or not, and we use them to draw simplified diagrams where we focus on whatever perspective angles and whatever fundamental proportions we have in those subjects. If we just have a couple of minutes, we can just do one. If we have a little more time, we might do 3 or 4 together, as long as we have enough time to really carefully observe the angles and then take whatever care is needed to reproduce them as accurately as we can on our perspective diagram, and then to check the angles afterwards. However, it's also a useful thing to do immediately before we do a drawing of our reference, as a way of just starting to see the information we're going to need to see to do the sort of drawing we're hoping to do. If you're interested in the video that I made of doing this drawing freehand, I'll post a link to it at the end. But the idea is that we see this sort of simplified drawing as something we can do quite apart from an actual drawing, as a simple and quick and easy exercise to focus particularly on the skills of observation and of drawing that we need to start to capture the perspective that we see accurately in our drawing. This is a great way to fast track this progress. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope this has been helpful. I hope it's something that for anyone who does struggle with perspective can use to really get on top of these issues and to not let wobbly, wonky perspective spoil the otherwise finished appearance of their drawings. But in the end, wherever you're at with perspective, whatever exercises you do or don't do, however wobbly or perfect your drawings look, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.